visiting our sister congregations around the region to learn more about how we all worship and run our congregations and live our UU faith. It's also really nice to see some familiar faces from work that we've done between our congregations in Appleton and here. So thank you for having me today. I retired about a year and a half ago and had big plans. First, I was going to go on a personal retreat to take a deep breath and figure things out. Where would I volunteer? How would I make writing a regular part of my daily routine? What would my strategy be to avoid getting consumed by cooking, cleaning, and home maintenance? What kind of exercise would best fit with my newly relaxed and expanded schedule? It was all very exciting. I had lots of thoughts. Then, in the spring leading up to my retirement date, life happened. In a series of cascading events, my thoughts were scattered to the wind, and my plans were aborted before they had even formed. In February, my husband got a scary cancer diagnosis that would dominate our lives for many months to come. In April, I got a call that my 90-year-old mother had a life-threatening infection and surgery was happening the next day. Mom has dementia and multiple other physical problems, so this was no minor thing. She survived the surgery and was in rehab for months, but during much of this time, her prospects didn't look good. By that fall, a heart rhythm problem of mine that had been dormant for some time returned with a vengeance. The medication I had successfully used to keep it under control stopped working. My life was increasingly dominated by what my fickle heartbeat would and would not allow me to do. Well, all the enticing choices that seemed to lie before me a short time ago faded away in light of more immediate priorities. Things did get better. Life has a way of coming at us in waves of good and not so good. But the big picture had also changed in so many ways. After a year of treatment, my husband is doing well, though we will never again take for granted a long future of carefree and healthy retirement years. My mother miraculously recovered. I elected to have a procedure last February that had a 70% chance of correcting my heart rhythm issues, and it seems to have worked. I no longer fear walking up the stairs or running after the mail carrier with a letter to send. I can exercise, take walks, and travel. I feel as if I have my life back. So what about the choices I envisioned before life intervened? They're not irrelevant now, but I do look at the whole process of choice in a different way. I laugh at my former self imagining that I could make up a plan and be fairly confident that it would all unfold just the way I imagined. You'd think that by age 65 I'd have figured out that there are way too many variables in real life to draw a straight line between what we want to happen and what is likely to unfold. That doesn't mean I don't have hopes and plans or choices to make. I make choices every day and I act on them. But as Anne Hillman proposes in her poem, I'm a little less businesslike now in how I view my present and envision my future. She says that something new is being born in us if we just let it. That's interesting. I'd kind of like to hit restart on my retirement, but this time my kickoff retreat would be focused on that one question. What is being born in me at this time in my life, and how do I let it emerge? I came across Hillman's poem in an online posting by Parker Palmer. He's a Quaker, a thoughtful writer, an advocate for social justice, an educator, and a lot more. He started something called the Center for Courage and Renewal, and you can find more about him and his work at their website. In Palmer's reflections on the poem, he offers, and these are his words, 5 questions for crossing the threshold of Hillman's new doorway that, if we took them seriously, might be life-giving for ourselves and for our world. 1. How can I let go of my need for fixed answers in favor of aliveness? 2. What is my next challenge in daring to be human in personal, relational, and political terms? 3. How can I open myself more fully to the beauty of nature and human nature? 4. Who or what do I need to learn to love next? and next, and next. 5. What is the new creation that wants to be born in and through me? So he has 5 questions to my 1, but same idea. What if, instead of creating a blueprint for the next phase of my life, I just mindfully, intentionally let go of my need for fixed answers in favor of choosing what will help me live more fully? What is my next challenge? What is the new creation that wants to be born in and through me? It takes a little stepping back to think this way, and it also implies saying yes to the things that will help me stay true to myself, even when those things feel uncomfortable or scary. Maybe especially when they feel uncomfortable or scary. I've learned this lesson once or twice in my life before, but it seems I need to keep on learning it. One time was when I was reorganized out of an intense managerial job that had left me exhausted and depleted. I didn't know quite what to do next and had little energy. We had an elderly neighbor who lived alone, and his family asked if I would consider stopping by now and then to check on him and perform a few simple tasks like changing his bandages and making sure he was eating his meals on wheels. I was hesitant. The neighbor had a reputation for being a grumpy old man. If you were a kid, his was the yard into which you were careful never to have your ball land. We'd been next-door neighbors for years and had exchanged a very few words. But I said yes because he needed help, I had a nursing background, and I had no real reason not to. Everything about this small venture was a surprise. He turned out to be friendly, grateful, and full of stories. His house was too hot, smelled bad, and was in sad shape. There was a little dog sculpture placed to cover a hole in the carpeting to give you an idea of the state of affairs. I had to brace myself before I knocked and let myself in, even after we'd gotten to know each other. And yet, as I washed his feet and changed his bandages and struggled to tug on his support stockings, I often found myself on holy ground. In the way these things often unfold, I discovered that we both had things to give the other. I gave some physical assistance and a listening ear. He gave me fascinating stories about the old neighborhood when it was just a farm and a couple of houses. His simple kindness and gratitude helped heal my weary soul. I had found a bit of the beauty of human nature. I wouldn't have chosen the role of my neighbor's caregiver absent a direct personal plea from his daughter. Saying yes was one of the best impulses I could have acted on at that point in my life. I'm not saying we should wait until an option stares us in the face before choosing to act, but sometimes just being ready with an open heart for whatever comes next isn't a bad way to go. I've attended 3 memorial services in the last few weeks, and they have powerfully concentrated my thoughts about the choices we make in life. One was for a childhood classmate who may have saved my life as a teenager. We were with a group of friends on the Crystal River canoe trip, a must-do outing if you live near Wapaka. You all live close enough, you should do it at least once in your life. It's generally a tame float down a scenic river, but it does have occasional rapids and twists and turns that are a bit challenging to navigate if you're not a skilled paddler, and none of us were. Plus, I could barely swim. We were outfitted with tiny, very unstable fiberglass canoes and those old-fashioned orange life vests. I wore one, but due to vanity, had it only loosely fastened. Part of the fun of the excursion is tipping over each other's boats, and eventually the inevitable happened and the boat I was in was overturned in a section of deep water. As I splashed and floundered and took in water, the strong hands of Bobo Dutcher grabbed the back of my life vest and pulled me to safety in one swift move. Bobo was a good guy, friend to many and easygoing. He was a size extra large person, and many thought of him as the gentle giant. I only saw him at occasional class reunions in recent decades, where he waved off my thanks for the long ago rescue. At his memorial service, I learned that Bobo had been a clown for a while after college and still loved to make balloon animals for children. He told his family he only wanted a small funeral because who would come anyway? Of course, the chapel was packed. Bobo chose kindness and helpfulness as a way of life, though his size could have easily made him a bully or a freak. I never knew that his family owned a cottage in Door County and that it was his favorite place to be. Sunrises there and the lapping of waves nurtured his spirit in a way that nothing else could. Judging by the stories and the tears flowing at his memorial service, I'd say that Bobo knew how to live and love. He understood something about opening himself to the beauty of existence. The other two memorials were for vital women who were deeply engaged in the lives of friends, family, and community. The litany of their many causes and projects and kindnesses was breathtaking. It was humbling to know that these two people could pack all that living into an average lifetime. Our closing hymn today will be "Just as Long as I Have Breath," and encourages us to say yes to life as long as we have breath to do so. The examples set by Roseanne Blair and Frances Johnson are an inspiration to me. They chose yes over and over again, though I'm sure they were often tired and frightened and discouraged. What gave them the strength and courage to say yes to being so fully human? I don't know about you, but I get tired and frightened off a bit too easily to fully embrace all that I might in my life. I listen to the day's news, and my first inclination is to escape into Netflix or the comfort of a good book. Not that those are always bad choices. My life has been vastly enriched by the number of times I've chosen books or a well-written TV series that makes me laugh out loud. The last couple of years, I've had many choices about political engagement, and they haven't been easy or comfortable ones to make. Is protesting in the streets the way to go? I have good friends who are very active in this arena, and I admire the commitment and the risks they take to protest injustice. I was moved to join the March for Our Lives, though this isn't typically the route of action I choose. I did join the local chapter of League of Women Voters, which educates about issues of the day and moderates candidate forums. I've become more informed and had a very rewarding time being an election observer for the League this past fall. The two sites I observed were great examples of well-run polling sites and knowledgeable poll workers. I saw workers go out of their way to register people to vote, patiently helping prospective voters gather the right identification and getting a language translator to help when needed. Even after a long day, the poll workers I saw were cheerful and welcoming to every single person. And believe me, there is a vast slice of humanity that shows up on election day. I witnessed young people excited to vote for the first time, parents who brought their kids to show them the importance of voting, and frail people who found a way to get to the polls, though you could see what a challenge it was for them to make the effort. I started the day nervous that I would have to call lawyers to help address problems, and ended the day lifted up by what democracy can look like. My choice to join the League has been a good fit for me. My participation has been an antidote to what can often feel like an almost hopeless political environment. One other element that both Hillman and Palmer stress is choosing what one refers to as being vulnerable to the beauty of existence, and the other describes as opening to the beauty of nature and human nature. We all know we spend too much time indoors, too much time fixed on electronic screens, and too much time sitting. Philip Chard, a therapist who's written 2 books on our spiritual connection to nature, feels that we've far distanced ourselves from the life-giving properties of nature. He advises as one remedy that we go out and sit on the earth at least once a day, no matter the season or the weather. And I tested him with a question about weather, like today's weather. That might be challenging for some of us, but we can at least touch a tree, hold a rock, take a stroll around our neighborhood, or take a little time to watch the birds from outside the window versus inside. Many of you say that they find their spirituality in spending time in nature, and I know that many do. But choosing to spend time outdoors as a daily spiritual practice is something different. These days, my mother looks at the world through windows from the inside. She grew up on a farm but was never much of an outdoor person. Still, when she has an appointment outside of her memory care residence, she seems to relish taking in the fresh air and her surroundings. During warmer weather, there's a wonderful backyard to her facility that has lots of flowers, interesting bushes, and lovely trees. Listening to birds sing is good for anyone's spirit. Mom has control over few of her choices these days. She can choose between 2 menu items for her meals, but the dishes she loves are only occasionally offered. Mom can't choose when she'd like company or who she'd like to see. To her, random people just show up at random intervals. She can say no to going to activities like music programs or art therapy, but she can no longer choose to do her favorite things, cooking and embroidery and reading to kids. She does choose her own imaginary world in which my father and her mother are still alive, and that gives her comfort. She has chosen to respond to her circumstances with a certain stoicism, kindness, and good spirit, a choice she's made when most choices are no longer available to her. It's been 5 years since her stroke, and this is a gift to her family and those around her. It's only fair to note that financial security offers more choices. If it hadn't been for Dad's careful planning, a decent pension, which is no longer available to most, and his and Mom's lifelong frugality, my siblings and I would be struggling to care for Mom in our homes or in a more questionable environment. A well-designed, staffed, and credentialed facility would not be an option. Finally, it's important to be mindful that we can't escape choosing by not making choices. To not decide is to decide, in the sense that not acting has consequences which may be more significant than choosing one action over another. Even when most options seem less than perfect, we see the results of political inaction all the time. If that weren't so, we'd have wonderful schools, humane prisons, and a far less compromised environment. When I was in my 20s, I was having a really overwhelming time of all the life passed before me, and I was completely stuck. I didn't know which way to go, which way was best, which way would close doors forever, and I eventually wound up seeing a counselor for some help. And after listening to my sad story, she just kind of thoughtfully sat in silence for a moment, and then she said, "Well, Deborah, you have choices." Wow. You know, something so simple to say to someone who's in a really stuck, unhappy situation, and something so obvious was one of the most profound things that she could have ever said to me. Now, I didn't like all the choices that I had before me. Some of them seemed really awful, but I had choices, and it gave me a release and a hope that I could never have imagined. And many times, as life has intervened over the years, I've reflected back to Doris Stacy and blessed her for telling me that I have choices. We all have different choices before us and different approaches to decision making. I'm often inclined to wrap things up too quickly on too little information because my need for closure is very high. Others let the decisions lie until the choice is no longer theirs, as in older adults who wait too long to arrange for assisted living or an aging-friendly home. Whatever your approach to life, may your choices be many, and may you find satisfaction in making choices that are true to who you are. May you discover what is waiting to be born in you and learn to live abundantly. I hope you find a lot to say yes to. Do we have time for a little conversation, or